Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful and not at all haunted neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are delighted that you're part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Podchaser, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Lydia Lukidis. She is back to celebrate haunted houses and haunted hotels. We just love having Lydia on the show, and as you'll hear, as we're talking about haunted houses and haunted hotels, I mentioned to her that I loved watching all those ghost hunter shows with my daughter Alejandra. I wanted to mention that because if you've been enjoying reading in the new year, and like everybody is enjoying reading in the new year, we have to give a big thank you and a big shout out to Alejandra because she has worked so very, very hard to help put this together. It's an incredible event. Alejandra has built 3 virtual stages, and we have invited authors from all over the world to climb up on those stages and read their books for you and your kids. It is an amazing free family literacy fair, and it all can be found at readingintheNewYear.com. It's still going to be up for another 4 or 5 days. It runs through New Year's Day 2021. Be sure to check it out. Hours and hours of online entertainment. There's also hours of offline fun. You can download all sorts of activities for free at readingintheNewYear.com. Joining us on the line right now from the beautiful city of Montreal in Quebec and Canada. She is returning to the show to celebrate 2 great new books, Haunted Houses and also Haunted Hotels. Please welcome back to the show our friend, Lydia Lukidis. Lydia, how are you?
I am very well today, and I'm so excited to be back. I always enjoy speaking with you, Jed.
I'm excited to have you back because I just learned something in chatting with you beforehand. You were telling me that haunted houses and haunted hotels are high-low reader books. And I want to talk about that in a minute. But first, why don't you tell us about haunted houses and haunted hotels?
Well, they're really interesting books that I wrote for Black Rabbit Books. So this was something that I was hired to do for a work-for-hire project. So the subject matter was given to me by the publisher, and I knew what the criteria was. And basically what it was entailed a lot of research into documented cases of alleged sightings or paranormal experiences in either hotels and houses. And it was really, I actually got spooked, to be honest. At one point I was reading these stories late at night, and I literally got spooked because, I mean, people might laugh at me, but I do believe in ghosts and spirits. So reading these documented cases, which, by the way, a lot of separate people from different parts of the world in the same hotel experiencing the same thing. How do we explain that? Mm-hmm. So it was quite an interesting process just doing the research, and then putting the books together was just a lot of fun because, of course, children and adults alike love to hear a good ghost story.
Yeah, they really do. I remember my daughter when she was in 3rd grade flipping through cable TV, and she came upon the Ghost Hunters, or one of those TV shows where they go into a house and they put up the cameras, and they've never found a ghost in all 10 or 12 years of being on the air. But my daughter sat down and she wanted to watch that, and everybody got up and left the room. And she wanted to watch it really badly, but she didn't want to watch it by herself, even though she said, I am not scared, but I don't want to. This is really interesting. I think someone should watch it with me. And so I ended up watching it with her, and we watched it for years. And kids do. They are fascinated by this, and adults too. They are fascinated by the idea that there might be ghosts and phantoms and paranormal activity in homes.
Well, that's the thing. It's the unknown, right? And this draws us in. It engages us. The unknown, because even in writing these books, I really couldn't draw any conclusions. I had to keep it open. Believe what you will. Here are the cases. This is what people have experienced. Now you take from that what you will, because I can't say with certainty what is and what isn't true, right? Mm-hmm. But what's interesting is that in the book about haunted hotels, I discussed the Stanley Hotel, which actually Stephen King went to. And Stephen King himself and his wife experienced so-called alleged paranormal activity and experiences, and that's what got him inspired to write the book The Shining. So go figure.
Yeah. Well, boy, talk about a creepy book.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a big fan of horror myself, but he is a tremendous writer, so we got to hand it to him.
Yeah. I've said on the show before, when I was younger, I was a huge horror fan. Loved everything Stephen King wrote. I remember reading all 21,000 pages in The Stand. I think I get exaggerating, but there was a lot of pages in The Stand, and reading The Shining and all of those, and the Anne Rice books. And then the day my son was born, I tapped out. I was in the middle of an Anne Rice book, and my son was born, and then when we had a moment, and I sat back down, I opened up the book again, I started reading, and I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
Don't want to go here anymore, and I haven't been back.
I get that. I mean, I don't like to be scared before having a child, after having a child. I just don't like it. But I have a lot of respect for authors and storytellers who are able to write in that genre. It's just not something that I can do. However, researching documented cases and writing about that I found a lot of fun. It was really a tremendous experience for me.
Excellent. I want to come back and ask you about some of your favorite stories that you found during your research. But first, I want to dive into, you were telling me that Haunted Houses and Haunted Hotels, two great new books, they're high-low readers. Now, that's a term that I was not aware of until we spoke this morning. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Absolutely. The term high-low is not necessarily something you'll hear in the trade market. So when you're out and about buying books in the store, you won't necessarily see that term being coined. However, in the educational market, it's a pretty big genre. It's high interest, which means it's the content, the topics, really engage children who are a little bit older. However, it's low comprehension level. So let's say it will target a child in grade 6 or grade 5, but has the comprehension level of, a grade 3 reader. So it really targets kids who are either reluctant readers, or perhaps it's English as a second language, or they somehow just aren't big readers and can't read at their level, but it really inspires them to continue reading, but in a way that they can actually do it and feel like they, can get through the book quite easily and feel good about themselves.
Now, this is I'm so very happy that I'm discovering this, and I love it, because it's true. There comes a point where, kids who are struggling to read, if you're in first grade, second grade, you can kind of get by reading a book that's not meant for first graders or second graders. But once you start getting into middle school, my goodness, if your buddies find you reading, something that your second and third grade brother and sister are reading, and and kids in middle school see another middle school reading that book, boy, you'd love to think that everybody has empathy and is going to be kind and loving and caring, but I got a feeling that kid's going to experience a lot of razzing.
I think so too. I think that's number one. But number two, I think it might not be a topic that child is engaged by. You know what I mean? They don't want to read stories about little cute bunnies anymore. They're of a different age. They have different interests. They want to read about different topics. And that's why I love high-low books, because as I was telling you before, when I give writing workshops, there's always a couple, one or two reluctant readers in the class. And they'll even tell me, I don't like reading. And when I actually investigate further, it's not necessarily that they don't like reading. They're either afraid of the process or they feel it's a confidence issue. They don't feel like they do it well, and so they kind of gave up years ago, and I find that really sad. And so when I go into my workshops and I hear that, I try to actually stick to those kids and talk to them a little bit more and try to recommend books that I think could be, more easily read by them, which are mostly high-low books.
Yeah. Isn't it fascinating that kids love to be scared? They love scary stories. They love scary, events and going on hayrides and all that kind of thing. But the kids who are afraid to read, they just tap out, and that's a scary that they don't want to deal with.
Yeah, it really comes down to the fact that they think they just can't do it. They don't think they're good at it. So hopefully with time we can, promote literacy by recommending books that are more tailored to their interest level but have a lower comprehension level so that they don't feel embarrassed for reading, like books, books that are really for younger kids. Mm-hmm. They don't want to read Dora the Explorer example. If you're in grade 4, you'll get laughed at. And that's not necessarily what you're interested in.
Right.
And that's why I love high-low books. And there's a lot of them on the market. If you look it up, just Google it, you'll see that there's a lot of them out there.
I was going to ask you that, if a parent is going into, if they can go into it, they can, number one, find a bookstore, and number two, if it's open for people to go in, can they, is there a special section they should look for these books, or should they just go up to the bookseller and say, hey, I'm a reluctant reader, I'm looking for a high-low book?
I think that going into a bookstore, you could certainly ask that, but you probably won't find high-low books in a trade, like in the trade market, so like in a bookstore. However, you can go to, for example, Black Rabbit Books. They have a website. That's the publisher I worked with. They only publish high-low books for the most part. So you can go onto their website and see a host of different interesting topics, but written at a lower comprehension level. And they're not the only publishers who do that. So they're definitely out there, but you do have to search it out. So if you're a parent of a reluctant reader, luckily I'm not, I would encourage reading as much as possible.
Yeah. And the other thing that you said that this would be great for is for English language learners.
Right. I mean, their comprehension level might not necessarily be at their age. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like for me, when I give workshops, the comprehension level is all over the board. Mm-hmm. If I'm walking into a grade 3 class, there's kids that are reading at grade 1, and then there's always kids. You're dealing with this range. Not every child is the same. They learn differently. They have different speeds, and that's really okay. The thing is just to encourage reading.
Yeah. I was sharing with Lydia before the show. One of the first international students who came and lived with us was a medical student from Italy, and she came to our home, and her English was very, very basic. She came out on tour with my daughter and I for 3 weeks, traveling the country, spending hours in the van, and she was, frustrated. She wanted to improve her English, and we suggested that she pick up a couple of middle grade novels. Not to be expected to read an adult novel, but read something with a simpler vocabulary. And it was really helpful for her, and it was a lot of fun. And I think one of the things, Lydia, you touched on earlier is there are some people in the world that love a challenge, and they love to be challenged, and they love to be put outside of their comfort zone. So if you say to them, move this 100-pound rock up the hill, they're all for it. But there are other people, and I don't know if there are more, but there are other people who don't like to be pushed outside their comfort zone. So if you have a kid who's a reluctant reader, if we can make reading more comfortable, where they can have more confidence, experience success earlier, that I think is a great thing.
I think so too, because, us writers, when we go into a classroom and either read our book or give a writing workshop, we're not just teaching about writing. It's also about critical thinking. It's also about developing confidence. And confidence is a huge one. So if the child is lacking in that area, like many children are, which is a normal part of their growth process, we want to encourage them to read something. And I also tell them, hey, reading is a subjective thing. You might not like the same kinds of books. Not everyone loves Harry Potter, for example. Some of you love it. Some of you have no interest in that. That's fine. Pick a topic you love. You like hockey? You like P.K. Subban? Great. Go read a book about P.K. Subban. So it's just an example, of course. But just to say that there's books out there on everything, nonfiction, fiction, and everything in between. So I always try to encourage them, just pick a topic you love.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would love to know some of 2 or 3 of the most interesting stories that you report on in haunted houses and haunted hotels.
Well, my favorite was the one I mentioned earlier about the Stanley Hotel and Stephen King reporting all this paranormal phenomena. But a lot of people reported the same kinds of things, i.e. apparitions, people floating in the air. And the reason for this is because apparently the hotel was built on a bed of crystals. And apparently these crystals might be having these paranormal superpowers. I mean, who knows? We have no, like I say, I can't draw any conclusions. But I do find it odd that guests throughout the decades visited this hotel, and it's only particular rooms, by the way. So certain rooms are haunted, certain other rooms there hasn't been any reportings. But certain rooms consistently have the same apparitions. So how do we explain that? Another one that I loved was this house in a very shishi neighborhood in Beverly Hills. But this house apparently was haunted, and, for example, there'd be furniture moving, they'd have parties, and my favorite part, and it's going to sound ridiculous, but there was a flying cabbage with a knife in it that was flying around the party. They were having a party with all these celebrities and, movie stars. This is Beverly Hills we're talking about. And this cabbage was flying around the party. But the thing is, everybody saw the cabbage flying. So how do we explain this? Now, another thing I touch on in the books is hoaxes. Because let's face it, a lot of these stories come out, and most of them are hoaxes. There was one very well-known hoax by George Lutz back in the day. Remember that old horror movie, the Amityville horror movie, or something of that nature? Mm-hmm. So he reported that this house in New York was haunted. However, it wasn't. And children want to know, well, why would you lie about that? And it's simple. It's for fame and to make money, because all of a sudden there was a movie made about it. So he stands to make a lot of money. So you do have to be discerning when you read about these cases, because obviously most of them are hoaxes.
Mm-hmm. That's something I think is a great point to touch on. Even if a parent is out there and is saying, this ghost stuff, it's nonsense. Why is my kid wasting time with this stuff? This is a really wonderful way to sit down and to talk to kids and encourage them to use their critical thinking. And I'm not talking about sitting down and reading a book with your kid and saying, look at that, that's ridiculous, of course, how can you believe this stuff? But just sitting down and say, well, what do you think? Do you think that this is accurate? How, if it is a hoax, how do you think they could, and just have that discussion, and empowering your kid and showing your kid the respect that your kid deserves by asking them to think on a little deeper level and, going for that journey with them.
I agree with that, and I just love that the books keep it open. There's no conclusion drawn. Yes, ghosts are real. No, ghosts are not real, because we simply don't know. Mm-hmm. And so it keeps it open, and that there's a space for children to enter into the stories. And as you say, discern for themselves and make up their own minds, and maybe their opinions will change throughout the years. But nevertheless, everybody loves a good ghost story. So for me, I was astounded by the attention the books got after I had spoken about them on social media. Everyone was asking me, where can I buy these books? Well, of course, I say go to Black Rabbit's website. But everyone's interested in this topic, and I guess I was surprised at the amount of comments I got. Like, I never received so many comments about other books I had written. So this is definitely a topic that in our popular culture is one that a lot of people are drawn to. Absolutely, yeah.
I don't think I've ever told anybody this story. My wife and I, right after my son was born, about a year after my son was born, my dad had passed away during that time. And we were at home alone. The baby was asleep. My wife and I had just lied down and went to bed, and we heard a knock on the door.
Oh, boy.
Now, we lived on the second floor of what we call here in Boston 3-decker apartments. So there's three apartments, one on top of each other, old wooden building. Now, to get into the hallway to knock on our front door, you had to go through a locked main door. And my wife's family lived underneath us. And we heard this knock on the door, and it frightened us. It was so late at night, close to midnight. There was no way. We called downstairs. Did you let somebody in? No, of course. The door's locked, and we never were able to answer the question, who was that? There was nobody out there, of course, when we went to investigate.
And maybe you'll never know. And that's part of the interesting thing is, again, the unknown. We just don't know, and it makes you think and wonder.
Yeah. Hey, speaking about the unknown, we have a lot of authors who listen to the show. And one of the things that seems to be a great unknown question is, how do I get myself an agent? You just signed with a wonderful agent. Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, yes. I mean, it is a choice, of course, whether or not you want to get an agent. For me, it was a no-brainer. I've been published without an agent, but I can't get to the big publishers because they're not open to unsolicited submissions. So for me, getting an agent was absolutely necessary in getting to the next kind of level in my career. So this has been, many years in the making. So for anyone out there who's querying, it's not something that happens overnight. Hey, listen, if you find an agent overnight, great, good on you. Maybe someone at some point did. I'm sure someone in the world has, but that's not the usual case. It does take years and years of querying and also researching the agents. You can't just blindly send out your query to any agent that's open because they may not be the agent for you. So you're essentially wasting your time. You're also wasting their time. So for me, it's really important to research the agent, see what they're like, what are they looking for, what do they represent, but also their personality a little bit. Like a lot of them are on Twitter. I follow a lot of them and, just day-to-day tweets. You get to know their personality. It is kind of like entering into a relationship. Mm-hmm. It's a business, professional relationship, but it's also, you need to like your agent. Yes. You know what I mean? You want to vibe well with them. You don't necessarily have to have the same beliefs, but you need to be able to work well with them. Mm-hmm. And it's one thing that I've learned is that there are no guarantees because I had already been through 2 different agents previous to Miranda Paul, who I just signed with at Aaron Murphy Literary Agency, which I'm so thrilled about. But I went through 2, and you know what? No regrets. They were both great agents, stepping stones, and also a way for me to learn. Mm-hmm. The first agent was really great, but we just didn't work well together. And again, you can really, you could sign with a great, amazing agent from a reputable firm, but it's just not the right match. And that's what happened to me. So finding the right match takes time. Mm-hmm. And so when I heard that Miranda had just became an agent about close to over a year ago at this point, because of course she's a very famous writer, I said, you know what? I love her books. I've always been a fan of her books, and I think she would make a tremendous agent. So we began our conversation close to a year ago. We began talking in November of 2019, and then she asked for edits, and, you got to be patient. You can't, create edits in a night. Well, maybe you can, but I don't. It took me a little bit longer. And then, of course, the pandemic struck, and that just threw a wrench in the publishing industry as a whole. So it took a bit of time, but finally we signed just a month ago. So I'm super excited.
That's wonderful, 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 wonderful. It is, you mentioned that it's not overnight. I think anybody who's out there considering, aspiring to be an author, you need to understand that it is a profession. It's,
right.
I don't know if there are any overnight successes in the writing business, in the publishing business, in the music business, any kind of art. It's a passion and it's a career, and just like every business, it takes time to build and commitment. And maybe that's that's one of the reasons it takes that commitment, because it kind of sifts out the people who aren't serious about it.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
You do need to be. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I think it's so. Your message is so important for folks.
Well, I mean, it's like you say, it does sift out the people that are not serious about it. Do you know how many people I get a lot of emails? Hey, I have this book in my head, and I've always wanted to write a children's book. That's really all great and dandy, but is this something you're considering as a career? Is this a craft? Or is this just, I want to get this one book published? If that's the case, then I would recommend self-publishing. Mm-hmm. If you just really want to publish this one book and you'll feel really accomplished once you do that, then that's a really viable avenue. But if you want to go the traditional publishing route, it will take time and research and learning about your craft and taking webinars and making mistakes and writing novels that you have to throw in the garbage. I've done that. I've written 2 novels that I had to burn, metaphorically, of course. So, it's part of the process.
Yeah. Well, I know one of the things people are going to want to know is where they can go to find out more about you. You mentioned earlier that folks can go to the publisher to find out more about Haunted House and Haunted Hotels. Remind everybody the publisher's website, and also let us know about your website, please.
Absolutely. Well, blackrabbitbooks.com, as I say, they specialize in high-low books. So if you've got children at home, or if you're a librarian or a teacher and would like to invest in some of these books, which I do recommend for reluctant readers, you'll definitely find some great choices. And as for myself, it's lydialukidis.com. You can subscribe to my mailing list every month and get free games and free poems and free stories, so on and so forth. I love to interact with children, so children are always invited to pop me over an email, or if they've written a story they want me to read, I'm always open to that kind of thing.
This is awesome. We've had a great time speaking to the author of 2 great new high-low readers, Haunted House and Haunted Hotels, Lydia Lukidis. Lydia, thank you so much for being back on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Kathy Cesari. She'll be sharing all sorts of great ways, great activities we can do with our kids. She'll also be talking to us and giving us some insight into homeschooling. Not the Zoom thing that so many families are experiencing, but more about the traditional homeschooling model. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Once again, if you haven't done so already, do yourself and your family a favor and check out readinginthenewyear.com. It is our free virtual family literacy fair. What a great way to make reading a priority in the year 2021. It's an amazing event. We're so very proud of it. People have loved it so very, very much. We want you to check it out. readinginthenewyear.com. The fair will be open for you and your family through New Year's Day 2021. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to thank our guest, Lydia Lukidis. Be sure to check out all of the wonderful books that she has written for you and your family. Also want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. But most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so very much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.